train rumbled to a halt, jolting me awake. I blinked in the dim light, disoriented. My watch read 3:17 a.m., an absurd hour for the local train. I rubbed my eyes, squinting at the deserted platform. This wasn't my usual stop. The silence was profound, broken only by the rhythmic hiss of escaping steam from the engine. A shiver crawled down my spine despite the stifling summer night. Where was everyone? Panic gnawed at me. I'd boarded the train half asleep, my head pounding from a migraine. Now, with the unsettling quietude, fear replaced the dull ache in my head. I considered staying put, but the thought of being trapped in this lonely carriage was unbearable. With a deep breath, I gathered my courage and stepped off the train. The platform stretched out in both directions, empty and stark-eye, illuminated by a single flickering overhead light. The station itself was a faded Victorian structure, its grandeur long worn away by time and neglect. Cobwebs draped the wrought iron railings, and peeling paint clung stubbornly to the walls. An unsettling feeling settled in my stomach. The air was thick and heavy, carrying a faint metallic tang that burned my throat. In the distance, a low, mournful whine echoed from somewhere deep within the station. Hesitantly, I ventured into the station building. The ticket booth was deserted, its glass case displaying a dusty array of outdated timetables. A tattered poster hung crookedly on the wall, its faded image advertising a long-cancelled carnival. Each creak of the floorboard sounded amplified in the deafening silence. My steps echoed eerily, bouncing off the deserted walls. A draft of cold air swept past me, carrying a musty smell of decay. Suddenly, a flicker of movement in the shadows caught my eye. Adrenaline surged through me. I froze, straining to see through the gloom. There, in the half-light, a figure stood motionless. It was a woman, her long white dress a stark contrast to the grimy surroundings. Her head was bowed, obscured by the wide brim of a hat. An unsettling aura emanated from her, a sense of sorrow so profound it felt physical. The woman slowly turned her head, revealing a face obscured by a veil of black lace. For a fleeting moment, I glimpsed eyes, hollow, lifeless orbs that seemed to pierce through me. Then, with a haunting sigh, she turned and drifted silently down a dimly lit corridor. A primal urge to flee overwhelmed me. This place, this woman, something wasn't right. I had to get out. Turning on my heel, I raced back towards the platform, but when I reached the tracks, the train was gone. The platform was empty, devoid of any trace of the train or the lonely station itself. Panic clawed at my throat. I was alone, stranded in a place that shouldn't exist. The low, mournful whine filled the air again, closer this time, accompanied by the chilling whisper of unseen footsteps. Terror propelled me forward. I didn't dare look back at the house, the source of the scream and my growing unease. Every fiber of my being screamed to get as far away as possible. But which way? The identical houses on Elm Street offered no landmarks, no guidance. I sprinted blindly down the sidewalk, gasping for breath, my heart a frantic drum solo in my chest. Then, a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye. I stumbled to a stop, peering into the inky blackness where Oak Street should have been. Two glowing red orbs materialized in the void, like embers burning in the night. They pulsed rhythmically, sending a fresh wave of terror cascading over me. The red eyes blinked, then began to move, gliding towards me with an unnatural grace. Panic turned to desperation. I bolted, the sound of my ragged breaths the only companion in the suffocating silence. I didn't know how long I ran, but eventually my legs gave way. Collapsing onto the cold pavement, I choked for air, my vision blurring at the edges. The red eyes were getting closer, the darkness around them swirling with an unseen menace. Just as I braced myself for the inevitable, a new sound cut through the oppressive silence. A guttural growl, low and primal, erupted from somewhere behind the red eyes. The glowing orbs hesitated, then abruptly turned and raced back into the darkness, the growls intensifying as they retreated. I lay there, trembling, until the growls faded into an unsettling silence. Slowly, I pushed myself upright, my body screaming in protest. What had saved me? What lurked in the darkness beyond Oak Street? The questions swirled in my head, unanswered and terrifying. I knew I couldn't stay here. The darkness, the screams, whatever creature chased away the red eyes. This place was a death trap. With renewed determination, I rose to my feet and began walking, hoping to find some kind of escape, some way out of this nightmare. As I continued down Elm Street, I noticed a faint light flickering in a house several blocks ahead. It was a beacon of hope in this suffocating darkness. Maybe someone there could help, could explain what was happening. Pushing through exhaustion and fear, I quickened my pace. As I neared the house, I saw that the light emanated from a dusty attic window. The curtains were billowing slightly, revealing a glimpse of movement inside. I approached the house cautiously and peered through a grimy window at the bottom of the front door. The room within was dimly lit, revealing a cluttered living room filled with dusty furniture and overflowing bookshelves. In the center of the room, an old woman sat hunched over a desk, her wizened face illuminated by a flickering oil lamp. Hope surged through me. This was my chance. I banged on the door, my knuckles rapping a frantic rhythm against the aged wood. The woman looked up, startled. Her eyes, the color of faded denim, were filled with a mixture of surprise and fear. The door creaked open a sliver. "Who are you?" she rasped, her voice weak and trembling. I don't know how I got here," I stammered, breathless from exertion. "But something terrible is happening. The street is gone and there are creatures. Please, you have to help me." The woman hesitated, then slowly opened the door wider. "Come in, child," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I stepped inside, relief washing over me as I crossed the threshold. The house was cold and musty, filled with the smell of old books and forgotten memories. The woman closed the door behind me and secured the heavy bolt. "What did you see on Elm Street?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I told her everything: the disappearance of Oak Street, the figure in the basement, the blood-curdling scream, the red eyes. As I spoke, her face seemed to sag, etched with a deep sadness. "You shouldn't have gone there," she said finally, her voice laced with despair. "That place, it used to be different." I leaned in, desperate for answers. "What do you mean? What happened?" She sighed, a weary sound that seemed to carry the weight of ages. "This town," she began, "has a dark history. 100 years ago, a group of men practiced forbidden rituals, trying to harness powers beyond their comprehension." Her voice trembled and she took a deep breath before continuing. "They opened a gateway to something that should never have been disturbed. They were consumed by it, their souls forever lost." A cold sweat prickled my skin. "And Oak Street?" I whispered, the weight of her words settling heavily on my chest. The old woman's eyes welled up. "It became the gateway," she said, her voice cracking. "A thin veil between our world and whatever lurks beyond. It feasts on the darkest desires, the deepest fears. It grows with every scream, with every ounce of terror it extracts." My mind reeled, trying to grasp the horrifying truth. The red eyes, the screams, the growing darkness. It was all a manifestation of some ancient evil, feeding on the town's collective dread. "But why now?" I rasped. "Why is it getting worse?" She shook her head, a single tear tracing a path down her wrinkled cheek. "I don't know," she whispered. "But someone must have disturbed the wards, the protections that held the darkness back for so long." Her gaze met mine, filled with a desperate plea. "You must leave, child. This town is beyond saving, but you might be able to warn others. Tell them about Elm Street, about the darkness that waits there." I understood her unspoken request. I was the unwitting witness, the sole survivor who stumbled out of the nightmare. "But how do I get out of here?" I asked, dread creeping back into my voice. "The way I came isn't there anymore." A flicker of hope ignited in her eyes. "There's a hidden tunnel," she said, her voice stronger now with newfound resolve. "It leads out of town, to the old highway. It's a risky journey, but it may be your only chance." She led me down a creaky staircase into the damp darkness of the basement. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and earth. Using a flickering kerosene lamp, she revealed a hidden doorway tucked away in a dusty corner. "The tunnel is unstable," she warned. "Don't stray from the path, and whatever you do, don't look back." With a trembling hand, she handed me a dusty backpack filled with water bottles and granola bars. It was a meager offering, but it felt like a lifeline in this desperate situation. I hugged her tightly, a silent thank you for the knowledge and the chance. Then, with a final deep breath, I stepped into the darkness of the tunnel, the oil lamp casting my shadow long and distorted on the uneven walls. The air grew thick and stale as I ventured deeper. Water dripped from unseen cracks, echoing in the suffocating silence. The tunnel seemed to twist and turn endlessly, testing my resolve with every step. But the memory of the red eyes and the screams from Elm Street fueled my every move. The journey felt like an eternity. Hours bled into one another, measured only by the dwindling light of the lamp and the gnawing hunger in my stomach. Just when I thought I couldn't take another step, the tunnel began to slope upwards. Relief flooded my system as I finally saw a faint light flickering in the distance. With renewed energy, I scrambled up the incline and emerged from the tunnel onto a deserted stretch of highway. The cool night air washed over me, fresh and clean. I looked back at the opening, a black maw in the hillside, a silent scream trapped within. I turned away, clutching the backpack close. Dawn was breaking, painting the eastern sky with streaks of pink and orange. It was a new day, a new beginning for me, but the horrors of Elm Street would forever be etched in my memory. I knew there would be no going back. This town, once a peaceful haven, was now a festering wound on the earth. But as I walked away towards the promise of a new horizon, I carried the weight of the woman's words, a responsibility to warn others, to share the chilling tale of Elm Street and the darkness that lurked within. It was a grim legacy, but it was all that remained.